And here we are. First episode, first try at something like this. My name is Drew. I'm a former D1 swimmer at the University of Kentucky. I love the sport of swimming and I just want to talk about it. And if you enjoy it, feel free to listen in, feel free to subscribe, to like, and keep posted on these weekly talks. We've got a lot to talk about today. This is a very busy time in the sport. So let's just get right into it. SECs. Texas, for the second year in a row, sweeps the men and the women. I don't think this comes as a surprise to anybody. Texas is just clearly the best team in the SEC. I know a lot of people don't like that, especially the SEC homers, the original SEC teams. I can imagine Florida probably doesn't like that. But they haven't done anything about it yet. Texas keeps beating them. So if you can't beat them, what can you really say about it? And this was just a classic. One team was just better than everybody else. I mean, there's plenty of stats I can tell you here, but they're all just going to emphasize that point. They had the best swimmer at the meet, Hubert Koch, won the 100 back, won the 2 IM, got second in the 2 back. Just a dominant performance. He was the high point, obviously, with something like that. Texas scored 1,000 points strictly from their individuals. So to kind of put that in perspective, Texas men could have theoretically disqualified every single relay that they had at that meet, and they would have placed fourth. Now, how do you score 1,000 points from individuals? Great question. 20 of their 22 men scored over 20 points, so they had the depth. I mean, everyone did their part on this Texas squad, and that's how you dominate a meet like this. You can't leave any roster spots just for the sake of having them. They scored 560 points from their top 7 swimmers. So they had the star power. They had the peak ability to win events, to take over events. And they were just the better team all the way around than every other school here. Florida came in second, Tennessee third, Georgia fourth for the men. For the women, Tennessee second, Florida third, Alabama fourth. I thought this was kind of a disappointing performance from Georgia. Obviously, the relay disqualification played a factor. But, I mean, a lot of people thought Georgia was in contention to maybe get second at this meet. I don't know that I was ever that high on them, but I think they should have beaten Tennessee. And no disrespect to Tennessee. This was a great meet for Tennessee, honestly. I think we're kind of in a phase of like, what do we do now post Crooks? At least that's what kind of the outside was saying about Tennessee. Obviously, they had no points. They had no problem scoring points, over 1,000 of them, 521 from individuals. Their relays did well. But Georgia, I think, is still probably the better team. I think they had a bad week. And I would not be surprised to see Georgia beat Tennessee at NCAAs. But I was surprised by that outcome. I do want to talk mostly about team performances. This is a team sport in the NCAA. We'll talk more in the future about why I think the NCAA should focus more on the team aspect. But obviously a couple of individuals you can't not bring up after a meet like this. Camille Spink, Tennessee women, had about as good a meet as you can ask. She won the 50 free, the 100 free, and the 200 free, swept it for the second year in a row. Only 3 women have done that at SECs, so she joined some pretty elite company. She scored 14% of Tennessee's individual points, which is outrageous. He scored 96 points. Josh Leando had a great meet. Maybe not what people really expected. I'm sure a third place finish in the 100 freestyle is not what people thought. I take away that Leando is not 100% at this meet. I don't like to speculate about tapers. I don't like to talk about people's training because, as you can imagine, I haven't been to a single practice in Gainesville this year, so I have no idea what they're doing. But I will say that I watched that meet, and my biggest takeaway from Leando was that he's not 100% right now. And if there's one person I trust to have someone ready to go at the biggest meet, it's Nesty at Florida. So if you're going to NCAAs, if you're going to watch NCAAs, I would be prepared for Leandro to show up and to show up big. I particularly am eyeing that 100 fly national record, 42.80. Leandro's danced around it a couple times. Personally, I think this could be the year that he does it. But we will have to wait and see on that. Anyways, back to the team performances. There was a couple of teams that made some big moves, which is rare because I think especially with a meet as deep as the SEC, which there's no conference as deep as the SEC. I mean, let's not kid ourselves. It's hard to move up. It's hard to move up one spot. Moving up one spot's a pretty big deal. Dropping one spot's a pretty big deal. So when you see teams that move like this, there's something worth talking about. I think Texas A&M men. I don't think you can tell the story of this men's meet without acknowledging it. Last year they were 5th. This year they were 9th. It's only 11 teams in this conference for the men. Obviously, they really felt those transfer portal losses. Baylor Nelson and Jacob Wimberly both went to Texas. I think that makes it sting even more watching them go and perform at Texas. They scored 86 points from their freshmen, which is not bad. Not bad at all. Unfortunately, though, they lose 70 points just off of graduating seniors. And they lost a lot of transfers last year. I would not be surprised if they lost more transfers this year. This is the second year of Blair Anderson being the head coach, or I guess the director, as she calls it there. I am absolutely nowhere near out on her. It's not my job to make coaching decisions for people. But I think we're getting to a point where it can't get much worse than this. I think Texas A&M is going to start to figure it out. I think Blair Anderson, the proof is in the pudding. She was at Virginia. We all know how good Virginia is, especially on the women's side. So we will have to wait and see how they go about fixing this. They're going to have to do it quickly because when you slide like this in the SEC, as you can imagine, going from 9th to 5th is going to be a lot harder than they went from 5th to 9th. So they'll have to move quickly. I think they can do it. The big question this spring and summer is who are they going to bring in? Are they going to be able to do it? We'll stay up to date on that. On a more positive note, Alabama women went from 6th to 4th. That was huge. Their top 5 swimmers really, really paved the way for that. Emily Jones was their biggest contributor, had 80 points for them. This is a huge deal. Being a top 4 team in the SEC is a big accomplishment. A lot of this came from upperclassmen performance, which is to be expected, especially when you make a jump like that. There's obviously been some development of your at-home talent. You usually can't bring in a class that will come in and do that at their freshman year. Speaking of their underclassmen, though, they only scored 16 points from their underclassmen. So obviously underclassmen, the expectation's a little, I don't want to say lower, but you can have some patience in a conference like this. But 16 points means that we have to make some development quick, or we have to bring in somebody that will. That's just the nature of college sports, especially with the new roster limits, with only 22 spots for the men, 30 for the women. If you're not going to make that development, there's no longer time to bring in a replacement to compete with you. It's to bring in a replacement that takes your spot. So we'll see if Alabama women is going to be consistently in the top 4, top 5 now. But I think this is a huge step forward for them. 6th to 4th. That's awesome. And I don't think we can talk about the men or the women meet without bringing up my alma mater, the University of Kentucky. It's a really interesting state of the program. It's not really something you see super often. But we'll talk about the good part, the men. I think this might have been the best SEC performance in men's history for them. They already have probably 10 guys going to NCAAs. They had, obviously, Levi Sandage dominate the mile, got second again. They had their first ever 18 in the 50 freestyle. They had a lot to be happy about. They had some incredibly fast swims. They got 4th in the 200 medley relay. This is a 200 medley relay that was fighting to not get last not that long ago. I would know because I was on it. So I'm super, super pumped to see them figure it out. They went from 9th to 8th this year, which doesn't tell the full story because they scored over 100 more points than they scored last year. And a lot of that came from underclassmen, from freshmen and sophomores. I mean, that 200 medley relay was all underclassmen, so we can only expect it to go faster and to compete for medals in the future. I would be really, really optimistic about this UK squad. I think they're a couple of years away from being a top 5, maybe even top 4 group in the SEC. I really mean that. But when I look over at the women, it really paints a different picture, and it's kind of puzzling. I mean, this UK group was a squad that was competing for SEC Championships. They won it in 2021, and they got 12th this year out of 13, and they weren't particularly close to 11th. I'm not here to bash swimmers. That's not what I do. I'm not here to make coaching decisions. That's not what I do. I'm just pointing out facts. You at the University of Kentucky cannot place that in the women. Let's just be frank. I have all the faith in that coaching staff. I know that coaching staff very closely. I know they're going to figure it out. But there needs to be moves made now to change this. And whether that's coaching, whether that's athletes, I don't know. I'm not in the program anymore. I just know that if you fall from 1st to 12th in a matter of 6 years, there is a problem with the women's team. And I think they're going to figure it out, but they have to act quickly because that's not good enough. Anyways, let's go to ACCs, another big meet. Virginia wins on the women's side, 1,400 points. Cal wins on the men's side with 1,150 points. People aren't going to talk about this Virginia win. We just come to expect it at this point. But I think this is a really impressive win for Virginia, just as a testament to who they are as a program. They lost the Walshes, and I don't even know if it's going to affect them. They're going to win the national championship next month. They won 4 relays at the meet. Claire Curzan probably had the best swim up across the country this week with her 200 backstroke. I mean, 146.0. That's an incredible swim. So nobody's going to talk about it because we all knew they were going to win. But just shout out to Virginia women. They are an incredible program, very well built. To have some stars come in, you know, Gretchen Walsh, obviously maybe the best women's swimmer since Katie Ledecky. And to really not lose a beat once they leave, that's hard to do. Now, the Cal men had a really interesting route to winning this conference meet. I don't think that this is not how you'll usually see teams win their conference. Cal men won 3 events at this meet. 3. And they won the meet. But if you watch the meet, if you watch the replays, you would see a Louisville swimmer win this event. You would see a Stanford swimmer win this event. And quietly, Cal is down there getting 5th place, getting 4th place, getting 6th place. And if I'm an NCAA coach anywhere, I'm sitting down my team and I'm telling them about Cal men. And I'm telling them that this is the formula to placing high at conference meets. Because Cal men showed up in the morning. They got 8th place instead of 9th place. They got 16th place instead of 17th place. And that was the difference. What a lot of fans, I think, don't realize is that these conference meets are not really won in the final sessions. The final sessions are the cherry on top. The morning is where you win. Making it into A finals, taking a 30th seeded swimmer, making it into the C final, getting those extra 5 points. Because what people, I think, forget sometimes is you can break the world record in the B final. You're still getting 9th. As long as 8th place finishes without DQing, they're going to outscore you. So that morning swim is really all that truly matters. I mean, it's not all that truly matters, but it is very, very important for scoring. Stanford getting 2nd place in the women on a new coaching staff. I know last year there were debacles about sending girls home early. This year, no controversy. very quiet. They got second place, which I think was very, very impressive, especially considering the DQ'd relay. Tori Husk wins the 200 IM. Great performance out of her. One thing I do want to talk about as you go down this ranking is the Louisville women got fourth at this meet, and that's really interesting to me. I think they could be a top 5 team at NCAAs, and they're getting fourth at their conference. So ACCs is a very deep conference. It also shows the difference between a conference meet and NCAA meet. Depth is not quite as important in NCAAs. But yeah, this Louisville team, I still think they're top 5 in the country despite getting fourth at this meet. I think that their top swimmers can compete with a lot of the top swimmers in the country. All right, those were the 2 conferences I wanted to go over. I do want to talk about these NCAA qualifications. For those of you that don't know, the NCAA, I believe in October, made changes to how you can qualify for NCAA championships. Instead of the previous automatic qualifying time, A time, and the B time, and then taking the top swimmers, it was a little confusing. No one really knew who was making the meet until SwimSwam would come out with their little projections. Now we have one time, and if you make this time, you're in contention to make this meet. But if you go the time and win your conference, you are in, no questions asked. And what this has created is a lot of swimmers who would not have made it previous years, but they hit that time and they won the American or the MAC or something like that. And now they've got a ticket to NCAAs. I know Florida Atlantic had a swimmer win the 50 freestyle going the exact time, 19.43. He's going to go to NCAAs. There's a lot of talk about this. I think what's really interesting is the difference between the athlete perspective and the fan perspective that I've heard on this. I know the athletes that I've spoken to are not fans of it. The first thing that they're upset about is the NCAA changed this format in the middle of the season after swimmers have already set their goals, have already planned out how they're trying to make NCAAs. And I think that they have very good reason to be upset about that. I think changing the way that you can win a national championship in the middle of the season is not fair to athletes. Changing the way that you can make NCAAs is not fair. I think that we should have at least gone through this year before making any changes. The other problem the athletes have is that this is NCAA. This is the national championship meet. This shouldn't be going to swimmers with auto bids that are frankly slower than other swimmers at other conferences. And there's definitely some credence to that. The fan perspective is more in support, saying that it's giving swimmers new opportunities, that it's putting schools out at NCAAs that we don't usually see. And I don't know, I have a problem with the term giving swimmers new opportunities, because if what you mean by that is that these swimmers are going to go to small schools, win conferences and make NCAAs, and by then high schoolers will want to go to a school like Navy, a school like Florida Atlantic, because they know the route to NCAAs is faster. I'm skeptical of that. I think swimmers want to go where they'll be the fastest, where they'll get school paid for. I think there's a lot of factors that go into where you're going to end up swimming, outside of having a faster and easier ticket to NCAAs, because you still have to bank on winning that conference, which I think is a big gamble, as opposed to going somewhere where you think you can develop into a regular bid NCAA qualifier. So I'm skeptical of that. I guess only time will tell. If you mean that these swimmers are going to get a chance to final, to make championships, I think that's kind of ridiculous, because you are taking a spot from an athlete that was more likely to make those finals than this athlete because they were faster in their conference. So if you like just having these schools at NCAAs, then sure, that's what this does. This puts more schools like mid-major schools into the NCAA competition. I think the biggest impact that's going to affect the rankings with this change is going to be in your 15 to 25s rankings. Those schools that they have a couple swimmers that barely make it onto the line. Your UNCs, your South Carolinas, something like that. Those schools are not going to have as many competitors, and those competitors that maybe had a chance of shocking the world, making a final and moving them up a few spots aren't going to be there because these mid-major schools are going to be there. I also think it could affect these really big teams, these teams that usually max out their NCAA squad. Your teams like, I know NC State over the past couple of years has had that a couple times where they've maxed out their NCAA roster and had to leave kids home. I imagine Texas will probably be there. Let me pose this situation. There's a 50 freestyle specialist who just misses the cut on the 50 freestyle because of a mid-major taking some of the last spots on that event. They were a big part of their relay contributing to making the NCAA A cut, but they don't have an individual swim. Now, these big teams are going to have a decision to make. Do you bring the relay specialist, or do you bring another individual who's qualified on their individual events and bank on maybe them finaling and scoring individually? That's going to be a hard decision for a lot of those schools to make. I'll be interested to see if that happens. My personal opinion would be that we just take the best swimmers. I don't think this is not NCAA basketball. I think it's different. I don't like when people make comparisons from sport to sport because that just isn't what swimming is. Swimming is we take the best swimmers, the fastest times, regardless of where they came from, regardless of what they look like. That is the beauty of swimming, is you can take someone who was raised country club, you can take someone that did public high school swimming, totally different backgrounds. As soon as they get in the lanes next to each other, as soon as they get on those blocks, it doesn't matter what their circumstances were. You were either faster than this guy or you were slower than this guy. You either won or you lost. You were either faster than you were last year or you were slower. And I think this kind of goes against the nature of our sport. I think it says, well, yeah, he went faster, but we're going to put this guy in because of where he came from. And I think that kind of goes against the nature of swimming. So personally, I'm not a huge fan of it. This is no disrespect to those athletes. I think that being able to go to NCAAs is such a cool experience. I'm very happy for them. But I also sympathize for some of those guys that are going to be left out. And there will be athletes left out. So that's how I feel about that. One last segment tonight. I want to talk about these two programs, Marshall University and Montevallo, losing their programs. Their programs getting cut. This was news last week. I know people close to Montevallo. I've heard that the entire school is facing some financial issues, and that was a big factor in this decision. I'm not quite as close to anybody at Marshall, but I imagine finances was probably a big factor. It's usually a big factor when a decision like this is made. I'm not a math guy. I'm not a finance guy, but I think the timing of this is just evil. It's just awful. I mean, Montavello was getting ready to travel to their meet. Marshall was a week away from their meet. I mean, these are the biggest meets of the year for these athletes. And all that they are supposed to be focused on is how can I be the best athlete that I can be? How can I contribute to my team and help them win? That should be the only thing on their minds. And I think the tone deafness of the directors here that made this decision is really disappointing. To come out at this point in time and say that these teams weren't going to have programs anymore. Marshall released an FAQ with one of the questions being, why did you announce this now? Their response, quote, because waiting doesn't make the challenge smaller. Well, don't act like you hadn't been thinking about this for weeks. I mean, you guys made this decision the day before and then just announced it immediately. Do you expect us to believe that it just so happens that all of your meetings about whether or not you're going to go through on this happen to fall while Marshall is out of town at this big meet that they're not going to miss? I mean, how stupid do they think we are? I mean, I agree that waiting will not make the challenge smaller, but it will make it easier for athletes to finish out their seasons, not have to worry about this while they're trying to compete for conference championships. Montevallo still had a great conference meet, and that's amazing. I can't imagine the mental fortitude that takes to still perform at your conference after something like that. I don't think this is the last program we lose. I think once the end of March comes around, I think we'll lose a couple more programs. I think that's just the state of swimming at the moment. And the theme here is both of these programs referenced facilities and pricing as the reasons why these programs got cut. And I think that speaks a lot. I think the money is a huge deal in college swimming at the moment. I think swimming as a sport is on life support right now. We are currently in a very, very bad spot. And when the season ends, I do want to go over some ideas and some things that have been thrown out to potentially get the ball moving in the right direction for long-term growth. But I think something that was talked about a lot after these two programs were lost is what can we do to make these pools profitable? How can we host meets here? How can we host camps here? How can we get people into the pool and to make the pool viable so that this facility is making money and that takes away from the cost of running the swim team? I think that's kind of the best option that these teams have, especially these smaller mid-major schools or these D2 schools. I know that Marshall is in West Virginia. I imagine a lot of those state meets are being held at West Virginia's pool, especially because it's new. So I imagine Marshall was not hosting very many big meets. I admit I don't know the situation at Montevallo. I know it's in Alabama. I would imagine a lot of their big meets are happening at Auburn or at Alabama. So these are probably two pools that we're not seeing a lot of attention outside of the college teams. And I think that played a big factor into it. I think that these teams were probably unable to make profit on the pool outside of paying $2 to go swim at the rec. And I think that that's a big reason why this happened. So if you're a smaller program, I think the short-term immediate thing that you take away from this is, what can I do to make my pool profitable right now? Can I run camps? Can I do meets? Can I do special events at the pool? Can I do something to get people in there, get people spending money there? But I think there are a lot more sustainable long-term ventures that you can take. And I think that we will get into that into the future. But for now, I'm going to cut it there. I am really excited about this, and I can't wait to get back on here next week, talk about some of the other conference meets going on, and sort of start to look ahead towards women's NCAAs. So with that, have a great night. Thank you all for listening, and I will talk to you all later.